Hello everyone, welcome to HFY Beyond Terror. This channel is all about HFY and sci-fi stories, where humanity's underestimated and then proves.
The Galactic Defense Collegium had been running its aptitude intake for so long that even the legends had filing cabinets. For 3,000 years, Cadets Sorting Unit, a 9-inch oblong slab of alloy and glass with a personality as warm as vacuum, had processed 47,392,816 applicants. It measured reflex arcs, pattern recognition, stress chemistry, pain response, lung efficiency, micromotor control, threat assessment bias, and 100 other metrics nobody outside admissions understood. It never guessed. It never hesitated. It never, ever needed a second opinion. Whole industries were built on its certainty. Insurers in 17 systems used its readouts to price expected survival duration policies. Matchmakers claimed its social compatibility subroutines were better than romance. Even smugglers quietly, illegally paid for scans to learn whether a recruit would crack under pressure. So when it failed on a Tuesday, it didn't just cause panic. It caused paperwork. Cadet Rowan Mercer stood in the intake line with 200 of the brightest hopefuls in the spiral arm. Ahead of him, a towering Caradite with plated shoulders stepped onto the platform. A clean chirp. Orbital breacher. The next applicant, a ribbon-bodied Vesh, slid forward, luminous eyes blinking. Chirp. Signals infiltration. Everything moved with the rhythm of a well-rehearsed parade. Step, scan, designation, stamp, next. Behind the transparent control desk, Senior Enrollment Officer Kelrick of the Hendery was enjoying what his people called a flawless administrative day. The Hendery worshipped efficiency the way some civilizations worship stars. Kelrick's 4 eyes tracked the queue. His 2 hands and 1 prehensile arm moved stamps and datapads without wasted motion. And his drink-bitter bean slurry imported from somewhere fashionable sat perfectly centered on its coaster. Standard body types. Standard readings. Standard placements. Then Rowan stepped onto the platform. The scanner hummed. The glass panel flashed. And a single word flooded Kelrick's screen in an angry, oversized font that looked less like text and more like an accusation. Deathworld descendant Kelrick's pupils constricted into neat slits. His secondary heart stuttered, decided it hated this new information, and stopped for a breath too long. His drink tipped from his grasp and shattered on the floor. "What in the blessed void?" he squealed, voice pitching high enough to make 3 junior clerks duck under their desks as if expecting shrapnel. Rowan blinked. He was average height for a human, average build, a bit sun-browned, hair clipped short in regulation style. He looked like someone who could lose a fight to a strong wind. Rowan said, glancing down at the platform. "Did I stand wrong?" Everyone else got a noise. Kelrick stared at the screen, then at Rowan, then back at the screen, repeating the cycle as if his eyes were trying to vote on which reality they preferred. "Cadet," Kelrick managed, voice suddenly too polite. "Please step to the side. Just for a moment." "Sure," Rowan said, cheerful. He hopped down and drifted toward a wall poster advertising the Culinary Auxiliary Course. His face brightened like he'd found an old friend. "Oh, they've got a kitchen track?" Kelrick's prehensile arm whipped open the emergency. Manual drawer, an object so thick it might have had its own gravitational pull. His claws fluttered through sections labeled anomalous readings, species misidentification protocol, medical overrides, and finally a dusty appendix nobody sane ever expected to use. Historical threat labels deprecated. A small note had been printed in cautionary red. Deathworld classifications retired 3-2 ex-galactic standard years ago, following confirmed disappearance of all known populations. Under no circumstances should this label appear on modern sorting equipment. If encountered, notify central authority immediately. The rest of the page was missing, literally. A bite-shaped hole ran through the bottom third, as if some archive insect had decided this part of history was the tastiest. Kelrick swallowed and tasted fear. He looked up. Rowan was still studying the poster, as if deciding between saltwork and baking. He didn't look like a galaxy-ending predator. He looked like someone who might apologize to a doorframe for bumping into it. But the sorter had never been wrong. Not even slightly. Which meant either the most trusted machine in galactic administration had glitched for the first time in recorded time, or Kelrick was standing in front of the kind of problem entire councils used to exile rather than confront. He made a decision that would later be debated in leadership seminars as either bold pragmatism or career suicide. He deleted the word. His claws typed standard infantry. His stamp came down with a crisp finality. "Welcome to the Collegium," he said too loudly. "Cadet. Mercer. Housing Block 7, Deck 3. Please." His eyes flicked to the broken mug. "Please try not to, 'cause paperwork." Rowan grinned like that was the nicest thing anyone had ever said to him. "I'll do my best, sir." As Rowan walked off, Kelrick reached into the desk's lower compartment and pulled out a flask labeled, in Hendry script, for administrative emergencies only. He took a long swallow. Tuesday had developed teeth. 3 weeks later, Professor Sivra Thornvale was lecturing in Survival Studies Hall B, and if you asked her, life was perfectly normal. Sivra had taught field survival for mixed species units for 47 years. She had watched cadets cry over cold rations, faint at the mention of vacuum exposure, and once, memorably, propose marriage to a thermal blanket during hypothermia training. She had seen everything, which meant, obviously, the universe had decided she needed to see something new. "Today," she announced, projecting an image of a spined crimson plant onto the display, "we cover hazardous flora. This specimen is colloquially called the scarlet razorleaf. Its sap contains a neurotoxin concentration of 0.01%, enough to cause severe distress if ingested in quantities exceeding." The class collectively shuddered. A gelatinous cadet rippled with visible nausea. Someone in the back whispered a prayer to a minor luck deity. "Your body weight," Sivra finished. "The safe distance is no less than 10 meters. Under no circumstances should you—" A hand went up in the middle row. Rowan Mercer. "Yes, cadet?" Sivra said, already bracing herself. Rowan spoke with the bright certainty of someone remembering a childhood snack. "We've got those on Earth." Sivra paused. "Excuse me?" "Yeah, they grow along fence lines in my hometown," Rowan said. "We called them Tuesday greens because they'd make you regret your choices midweek. My sister dared me to chew one when I was 10. The room went so quiet it felt pressurized." Sivra's teaching tablet slipped from her claws and hit the floor with a clack that sounded like her tenure cracking. "You chewed it," she said faintly. Rowan nodded. "Once. It's better if you blanch it first." "Cuts the bite? Want me to show you?" Before Sivra could assemble a sentence that contained the words "absolutely not," Rowan vaulted over 2 desks with athletic ease, landed beside the sealed specimen pod, and somehow had the containment latch open. A dozen cadets made strangled noises. One fainted so neatly it looked rehearsed. Rowan lifted a leaf between 2 fingers, studied it like a chef inspecting produce, and popped it into his mouth. Sivra made a sound that was part scream, part disbelief, and part a formal request to retire early. Rowan chewed thoughtfully. "Needs salt." The medics arrived to find Rowan healthy, his pulse steady, his pupils normal, while Professor Thornvale sat rigid in her chair, eyes unfocused, whispering the same phrase over and over. "It ate the poison. It ate the poison." That evening, an emergency meeting convened in the Collegium Secure Conference Chamber, a room designed to survive decompression, siege, and the occasional angry admiral. Present were Dean Morton Grev, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Helix Vane, Professor Thornvale, and several officers whose rank insignia suggested they were used to giving orders to fleets. Dean Grev stood with the posture of someone who just watched his pleasant career timeline fall into a waste recycler. "We have," he began, "a situation." Dr. Vane's mandibles clicked as he scrolled through medical data. "My instruments indicate Cadet Mercer should have experienced systemic failure within 30 seconds. Instead, his vitals improved. His immune response is—" He hesitated, then used a phrase no medical professional liked. "Unreasonably robust." Thornvale, still pale, rasped, "That's not the worst part. I asked him about Earth's ecosystem for my report." The room leaned forward. He said, "Verbatim, Earth's pretty tame. Only a handful of things kill you fast. Snakes, spiders, some fish, a few plants, storms, other humans, and the small mammals." Silence. Dean Grev's eyebrow ridge twitched. "Define small mammals." Thornvale's hands trembled. "Something called a honey badger." I searched the xenobiology archive. The file was flagged as mythological weapon. Dr. Vane's claws flew across his console, cross-referencing Earth atmospheric chemistry with habitability metrics. "Dean, our charts say Earth cannot support complex life. The oxygen level is incendiary. The microbial diversity is—" He stopped and stared at the screen. "It's listed as non-viable." An admiral muttered, "Then why is there a human in our academy?" Dean Grev exhaled through his nose, then turned to the view window. Outside, on the training grounds, Rowan Mercer was jogging at a speed that would qualify as an evacuation sprint for most species. He was humming. "Contact the historical archives," the dean said quietly. "Either our databases are catastrophically wrong, or we've admitted a walking." Contradiction? At 03:00 hours, deep beneath the Galactic Historical Archives, Archivist Supreme Nex Vero received the request and felt genuine joy for the first time in centuries. Nex's species found excitement in footnotes. He lived for forgotten annotations and contradictory records. A mystery was a feast. He pulled up every reference to Earth. The results were chaotic. 17 separate archives carried entries, each with a different warning label: moderate hazard, restricted access, do not approach, seriously do not approach, and one that simply read, "Why would you do that?" Then he found the locked files, the ones marked. Deathworlder's historical. Only Nex's tentacles trembled in delighted horror as he read. They hadn't gone extinct. They'd been relocated, quarantined, hidden on a planet so violently inhospitable that the Council had assumed nature would finish the job. That planet, according to the final unanimous vote, was Earth. The documents described beings who treated toxins as seasoning, who laughed in storms, who survived by turning every danger into a lesson. But the most fascinating piece wasn't the biology. It was the decision memo dated 3,247 years ago. Resolution: relocate Deathworld populations to Earth. Classification: certain attrition. Recommend monitoring for 1,000 years maximum before reclassifying as extinct. Under no circumstances initiate contact. Risk to broader civilization unacceptable. Nex leaned back and made a sound that could only be described as scholarly glee. "Oh," he whispered, "this is excellent." He activated his priority communicator. Dean Grev answered with the exhausted voice of a man who'd started measuring his life in crises. Dean Grev. "Dean," Nex said. "Sit down." "I am sitting." "Sit down harder." Grev did as if gravity might help. Nex continued, "Your cadet is human. And humans are not just from a death world. They are descendants of the populations the Council exiled 3 millennia ago because they were too disruptive." A long silence followed, punctuated only by Grev's breathing. "How disruptive?" Grev asked. Nex consulted the file. The Council didn't attempt extermination. They voted to move the problem far away and hope it resolved itself. That was their safest option. Grev stared at the window again. Rowan was now lifting a stack of training weights as if they were groceries. Several cadets watched with reverence. "What do we do?" Grev asked. Nex's voice sharpened. "Do not alarm him. These records indicate humans respond to stress with improvisation. And their improvisation tends to be inventive. So we treat him normally." "Extremely normally," Nex said. "And do not let him discover, you know." Grev swallowed. "Understood." Unfortunately, that advice arrived 47 minutes too late. Rowan Mercer had been assigned a simple task: prepare a presentation on extinct warrior species. He'd gone to the library, humming, and found a file titled Deathworlders, a historical mistake. He'd opened it, and he'd stopped humming. 3 days later, senior staff assembled for what they assumed would be a routine student talk: charts, dates, and a blessedly dull conclusion. Instead, Rowan Mercer stood at the lectern with the relaxed smile of someone about to rearrange the room's understanding of reality. "Morning," he said. "I'll be presenting on the Deathworlders, their history, their capabilities, and their current status." Dean Grev's organs attempted to resign. Rowan clicked to the first slide. "The official story says they vanished 3,000 years ago. That's inaccurate. The Council relocated them to a planet called Earth, expecting the environment to erase them." He let the silence build. "They didn't get erased," Rowan continued. "They adapted. They evolved. They turned that planet into home." He moved to a comparison chart, clean, well-labeled, brutally calm. "The old records describe us as frightening because we endure, because we problem-solve under pressure, because we bond fiercely and protect what we claim as family." He looked up at the officers. "Here's the part I think they missed. Humans didn't evolve to be warriors." Final slide. "We evolved to keep going." His voice softened. "When your weather can kill you, your oceans can kill you, your food can kill you, and your neighbors can kill you, survival becomes a culture. The things you feared, adaptability, stubbornness, loyalty, those aren't weapons. They're side effects." He scanned the room, eyes landing on Dean Grev. "So the question isn't whether humans belong in the galaxy. It's whether the galaxy is ready for a species that spent 3,000 years getting better at refusing to disappear." Someone whispered, "What do you want?" Rowan smiled, and it wasn't a threat. It was something more unsettling: sincerity. "I want to graduate," he said. "Serve, help, and maybe make sure the next time Earth shows up in a database, it isn't under 'please pretend this doesn't exist.'" The room remained quiet, but the fear had shifted into thought. 6 hours later, the emergency conference chamber filled again, this time with arguments about diplomacy, containment, risk, and the Council's likely reaction. Dean Grev listened, then raised a hand. "We're asking the wrong question," he said. "We keep saying threat, but look at his record. Perfect marks. And his stated goal?" He projected Rowan's intake form: to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The old reports were written by beings who saw something they couldn't control and assumed the worst, Grev said. But what if the Deathworlders weren't evil? What if they were inconvenient? What if the galaxy didn't exile monsters? What if it exiled solutions? The door chimed. An assistant's voice crackled over the intercom. "Dean, Cadet Mercer requests permission to speak. He says he'd like to clear the air. A few officers shifted toward weapons. Dr. Vane clutched his med scanner like a comfort object. Grev sighed. Send him in? Rowan entered with hands visible, posture open, expression warm. He took in the tension, the guarded stares, the way an admiral's fingers hovered near a sidearm. So, he said lightly, my little history report caused a stir. A stir, Grev repeated. Rowan spread his hands. Look, I get it. The old files paint humans like a disaster with legs. But those files are ancient, and fear writes lousy biographies. He nodded toward the window where cadets trained together, laughing in a dozen languages. Everyone here signed up to stand between danger and people who can't fight back. That's not alien to me. That's familiar. An officer frowned. Why? Rowan's smile returned, gentler now. Pack behavior. Humans bond. We bond with dogs. With ships. With teammates. With anyone who shares our values. He looked around the room. You've treated me like one of you. That means you're in my circle now. A pause. Then Grev asked quietly, what happens when Earth isn't hidden anymore? Rowan's expression sobered. Humans are curious. More will come. When they do, you can meet them with the fear of 3,000 years or with a hand extended. I'd prefer the second. But either way, the stars aren't going to stay out of our reach. Another long silence. Finally, Admiral Rex Scales, still dark with stress, asked, is it true humans consume stimulant beverages as recreation? Rowan's grin cracked the tension like a dropped plate. Coffee? Yeah. Fair warning. For most species, it's somewhere between a mild toxin and rocket fuel. But I'll bring a tiny sample tomorrow. Dr. Vane, already scribbling notes, murmured, for medical research. The meeting didn't end with alarms. It ended with a plan. Controlled integration, honest diplomacy, and a new classification in Rowan's records. Not infantry. Not Deathworld descendant. Simply human. 6 months later, the Collegium published a slim new manual titled Interspecies Teamwork, Practical Notes for the Unexpected. Chapter 7 was devoted entirely to working with humans, and included warnings like, if a human says, this will be fun, reassess your safety parameters. Humans treat impossible as a scheduling issue. Never underestimate the power of human bonding. They will adopt you. Graduation day arrived and something unprecedented occurred. Every cadet from Rowan Mercer's cohort graduated with honors. When asked how, Rowan shrugged into the microphone like it was the most obvious truth in the universe. We don't do abandonment, he said. If you're in the group, you make it through. In the Collegium Museum, Sorter Unit A9 was retired behind glass. The placard beneath it didn't mention the panic, the deleted word, or the flask emptied in a single afternoon. It read, Aptitude Scanner Mark A9. The last machine to assume humans would fit neatly into anyone else's categories. And deep in the archive's new folder, new label, another file began to grow, filled not with warnings but with case studies, cooperation protocols, and reports of impossible rescues. Species who improve everything by refusing to stop trying. The galaxy, it turned out, had been waiting a very long time for someone stubborn enough to prove that can't was just a temporary misunderstanding.